Greetings, everyone, and welcome once again to the Monday night version of To an Imperfect Union, presented by the political consciousness of West Coast csteelerfan. Few things I want to talk about this week. Dr. Casey will be joining me soon. Hopefully, Ms. Sims and Mr. Scott. Because I want to address some of the voting rights as well as some of the bills that were passed this week, or at least the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, and exactly what do these so-called provisions mean to our neighborhoods. And some of the misconceptions that are just being put out there by the right that are just absolute lies. I mean, and I thought at one time, once again, dating myself, we always thought that lawyers were the professional liars and journalists were out there to write the story and let you form your own opinion. Well, as we can see, that has certainly disappeared from uh, this part of our lives. But there are a couple of things that the GOP used this week to show you their pettiness. And the first one I'd like to point out, and I really don't have to point it out because there are people much more recognizable than I that have worked with this particular act and saw that the GOP reversed themselves and went along and passed this act. And this is the toxic burning of human excrement, where uh, I'm sure Bill, this is one of the things that can be used as a type of punishment in the military. You have to serve latrine duty, where you're emptying these buckets of diesel fuel and as I said, excrement and as well as other things, and you are inhaling these fumes while you're doing it. And I mean, this is not something new because this practice was also common back in the Vietnam days. Good evening, Mr. Scott. I interrupted.
Hello.
Now, are those cherries that you're eating?
Well, you're very observant.
Well, it's because I have some down here right beside me myself.
Yeah, I have to get them. I have to get them when they're in season. Like I load up. Helps me against certain things. Wards off certain things.
I hear you. Yeah, but yeah, I got my fix yesterday, so I was like, I recognize the act. It's like,
And they're
uh,
expensive. They're expensive too. I mean, you can't just go get a whole big bag of them like you like. So you got to kind of ration it.
see, I made that mistake yesterday. I didn't look at the price, and I grabbed the bag, and I ran up to the counter with it, and the lady said, $11. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. let, let me get a bag and pick some out of here.
Oh yeah, that's the only that's the only way to go.
That's like whoa, but see, once again, uh, I know, that there's a lot of people talking about prices and whatnot. So, hey, it's like out here. Do I get a gallon of gas or do I get a pound of cherries? So, either way, that $5 is
But
gone.
see, I would think everything grows out there. I mean, they could probably, I mean, California.
But it takes one thing to grow all things, whether it's plant or animal, and that's water. Okay. Okay. See, just because we got this coastline of ocean water here, you can't drink it. So, if you look into, the annals of California, and especially now because of all the fires and whatnot, there are certain parts where water is being rationed, but California actually buys a lot of its water from Colorado. A lot of our water comes from the Colorado River.
And it's drying up. And I saw some pictures. I couldn't believe it. This thing is about half the way it used to look.
Hey, the reservoirs aren't full like they used to be anymore. I mean, but people say the planet is not warming, and I mean, the water is going somewhere. I realize that that there are a lot of people that are drinking water, but hey, sooner or later they're gonna have to find something to do with all this salt water. You know, you see, so a lot of things that we saw, that used to be science fiction are now facts. So I don't see how we can go to the moon, but we can't take salt out of the ocean water. But that's just me. You know,
Well,
just thinking.
speaking of the moon, my father-in-law, we had a big 100-year birthday party for him.
Yes,
So,
yes,
and my wife had a cousin who went to, is it the Air Force Academy in Colorado? He graduated from
yeah.
there, and he's a commercial pilot for United, been for many years. And so I talked to him at the party, and he says he went up to Wayne, my father-in-law, and he said Wayne told him, "I want you to fly me to the moon." he, said, he said, "Just me and you. Let's just go up to the moon and come back."
Hey, no, never can tell what might be possible, but there. I was talking about some of the things some of the petty things that went on this week, and of course, the first one I was talking about was the burning pit bill for the veterans that had to burn the human feces, and a lot of these people. I mean, you can see the methane gas coming up off of it as you stir it around. Of course, I'm telling you from experience, but yeah, I mean, this was a punishment. This was, like KP or part of your punishment. This wasn't something that a reward. And it surprised me that it took so long for these veterans to get this passed because we talked about this back in Vietnam and even before that. The consequences of doing this. So it's just like Agent Orange, 20 years later, 50 years later. Oh, yeah, that did, hurt your lungs. And, so, but one thing that concerns me even more because it hits, I'm certain that someone in your family is affected by it. And I remember for years, especially on my mother's side and my grandmother's side, uh, diabetes, and how much they had to use insulin. You had to take the shots 2, 3 times a day or whatever it
Oh yeah,
was.
my grandmother had to do that.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
and I remember, like at that time, and I might not, maybe it was a lot, but a dollar or two, but you could look in grandma's fridge or somebody in the family's fridge, and you see a couple bottles of insulin in there, and you expected them, like I said, to take the. Now we have the Republicans that don't want to cap the price of insulin when this is something that affects more than anyone else the senior population as well as black and minority populations.
Yeah.
I mean, what did you think when you heard that? I mean, and and then of course, well, let's talk about that, and then we'll talk about uh, the big convention over the weekend with 45 and his boys. But you, let's talk about the insulin first. What did you think?
Well, it's like you say, James. I grew up a lot, spent as much time with my mother as I did my grandmother, and my grandmother was diabetic. I mean, as long as I'd known her, she was diabetic, and she would give herself shots in the thigh every day. And she would send me. There was a drugstore up here that these Irish people owned, right around the corner. That my brother lives in that house now. It's just down the street from me. But she would send me a note to go there and get her insulin. I remember exactly what it was still U80 MPH. That's
Yes,
what the insulin was that she would get. I remember it to this day. And that guy, that pharmacist knew her, and he would give me that insulin whenever she gave me a note to go up there. And then she did what they call day work. Okay, she went out to these rich white folks and cleaned their houses. That's what she did. And so on Fridays, when she got off work, she would take me with her on Friday, me or my brother, so we could carry the groceries home, so we could carry all the stuff she bought. But she'd stop at that drugstore and pay this man for the insulin. So there wasn't no insurance, but she had access. She had access to it. Nowadays when you see the prices of this stuff and how, if you don't have insurance, if you don't have insurance, you got to be destitute. You can't. They're not going to help you do anything. They're going to just. The prices have gone through the roof for these essential things that they know these people need them. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs, James. And I think as you get older, you really see it a lot more clarity as to what the heck we've doing from where we've been to where we are now. And how does this happen? How do we let our seniors, now that we're in that age, how do they do this with good conscience? So yeah, it's sad, very sad to
I
see.
mean, it's kind of like the old Popeye cartoons where Wimpy says, I will gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. you know, but I can't go to my nearest Rouse or CVS and say, "Hey, Doc, uh, my check don't come in until Friday." Well, you get your insulin on Friday. I mean,
Yeah,
that's it's, you
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah. But it's like that old man pharmacist knew these people needed that, and he knew my grandmother was like clockwork. If she was here, she'd be there every Friday, to take care of whatever she needed. But
and usually you had the corner grocery store. You went to the A&P for your big stuff, like you say, but the little stuff that you had to get through during the week. You usually went down there, and Mr. Berman or whoever it was, yeah, tell Miss Williams I'll put it on the bill. Friday she come in and pay it Friday or
yeah,
Saturday.
yeah,
You
yeah. No credit cards and all that. And see, the credit
know.
card is a scam too, because the merchant, they have to pay. They have to whatever they charge you from, they got to pay them
Yeah.
for So that's a scam.
And then the credit card people charge you a fee to pay the fee that the merchant has to pay. So it's
Yeah, I know. It's going
yeah.
and coming. So, and these politicians, what are they doing? We just don't get people in these things to really look at those kind of things that affect people's day to day lives. Fix those things first. I understand about climate, and I understand, especially when you look at water. You can't choke people. You gotta have water. Period. That's every like you say, James.
Yeah.
Everything gotta have that.
Yeah, I mean, now down in Kentucky, they got too much water. They got floods
Yeah,
down there,
yeah,
and that so-called conservative senator hasn't even been down there to visit the people. But I'm
yeah,
so concerned about your welfare.
yeah.
You know, so uh,
And the water. That's another scam. I played at a real fancy place once. My wife, my father-in-law, everybody came, and so they had a cash bar there at this place. And so my father-in-law walks up to the bartender and says, "I want a glass of water." And the bartender says, "Well, I got bottled water here. It's $3." And my father-in-law goes, "Where's the drinking fountain? You got to have a drinking fountain in this place, don't you?" And so the guy scratched his head and he said, "I think there might be one up on the third floor somewhere, in some area where they don't even use it." My father-in-law marches me up to the third floor, and there was an old drinking fountain, and he got his drink of water. But he was not going to buy the bottle of water.
yeah, I mean, that now, and I once thought, I guess maybe it was back in the 90s. I can't remember exactly when they first started selling water, but this was something that we in the neighborhoods. Man, that's white folks who do that, but we'll never do that. You'll never find colored folks buying water. Are you serious? you know, like you said, you can't go to an event now. I don't care whether it's a boxing event. Uh, you go to the baseball game. How much a bottle of water costs you at the baseball game, Mister Scott?
Oh, $5 minimum.
See, you know, so I mean, selling water. I guess back in the day they sold the Indians blankets, so it's okay to sell us water. What the hell?
Another scam. There's another scam.
Good evening, Dr. Casey.
How y'all doing today?
I'm doing good. I see already. I'm gonna have to control Mr. Scott. But how you doing?
As long as he ain't been on my Instagram lately, he all right.
Okay. Well, I think I got my two requests, so I've been pretty nice lately. I don't know. It's like,
Yeah,
but
I'll have to check that out. I was just talking to JK3 about some of these things that's going on around here in the country. Because see,
Which
sometimes
thing is a
JK3
lot
and I
going on right now.
we may bump heads sometime, me and JK3, but we coming from the same place. So
well, the first thing I was talking about was the veterans law, where the GOP didn't want to pass, the burn pit law. At least that's what we used to call it. I don't know, you guys, but burning human excrement with diesel oil and gasoline.
It's still called burn pit.
Yeah,
So
okay.
that is, you know how I feel about the VA and the government right now. Anyways, but they don't. It seems like they act like they care, but they don't have as much care as they should. Most of them aren't veterans, so they don't know what it's like to be um, a veteran or what veterans go through. And a lot of times, they treat veterans kind of like how they treat people on welfare, where they feel like you should just be happy with what you're getting. And then sometimes it's about the bottom line. They want to put the funding where they want it to be versus the places really that would help make life easier for those who have made life easier for everybody else. It's crazy because I don't put nothing past them. They gon' duck and die just like they did with Agent Orange for so long. They didn't want to approve that for many many years. Um,
35.
so I mean, at
35.
this
You
point,
want
it doesn't surprise me. But a lot of times because they're not veterans and they don't know, like, how those things truly affect people. They don't see, like, I don't know if they're actually seeing veterans that have been affected by burn pits. Because that would arrest your attention a little bit more or differently than you just looking at a bill and the bill is saying, well, these are the things that they're going through. If you don't really understand what people are going through, then it doesn't make sense. Now, I have signed up for the burn pit registry, so I need them to pass it.
I hear you. Unfortunately, for us, I mean, I don't understand how, all of a sudden it's not retroactive because it's not like we didn't have enough lawsuits back in the day.
Mhm.
You're watching methane. I mean, like just bill. Well, anyway, a little too much
I mean, but
experience.
it's it's almost like with the Gulf War illness, it's so hard to get rated up under the Gulf War spectrum of undiagnosed illnesses and all the things that come up under just being in Iraq in general. They don't make that easy. I remember when I first got out and was trying to get disability for PTSD. It took me like 7, 8 years for them to even act like they believe the fact that I was, like, real life in a firefight. Like, I real life got shot at. We real life got, like, I had to discharge my weapon. I used a magazine and a half. They act like they couldn't fathom the fact that we were getting attacked that night. It took so long for them to grant that, but it's almost like dealing with anything with the government. It's
Well,
almost
remember when we came back, we were like the World War II veterans. We were combat weary. We there was no such thing as PTSD. You were shell shocked. I think
Yeah, I
was
always
the
said
word.
my uncle was shell
Yeah,
shocked.
yeah,
like
but
see, but that's why we got a bad rap. That's why PTSD is looked at like, oh, they on the verge of, going crazy. I mean, we do have people with PTSD is it's a little bit different when it's wartime PTSD, but everybody has PTSD because
yeah.
everybody has been through something very traumatic that changed the way that they approach life. And a lot of times people think that when you're a veteran, it's something different. But lately, I've heard a lot more people talking about how common PTSD is amongst people, especially Black people from urban neighborhoods in the hood, where you're seeing your friends and family members go to jail, get shot, get killed, and all of those things right on the street.
Well, like I said, it's sometimes things uh, because and I don't want to get off into it that much, but a lot of times, especially when I was coming back and very bitter, and all of a sudden everything was PTSD. If the cops stopped you and i- at night, on your way home, I got PTSD. I'm like, wait a minute,
See,
hold it. But now that you get like, but at one time it was all lumped under one big thing. Like I say, you were shell shocked, combat weary, whatever you wanted to call it. But. And then the second thing that Mr. Scott and I were talking about was this uh, reasoning for not capping insulin. And we were all talking about, especially among the black and brown community, where almost all of us can remember a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, someone that was affected by what we call sugar diabetes.
mhm.
And you had to have insulin. And like I said, maybe it didn't seem like a lot at the time, but you spend $1 or $2 to go down, and get your bottle of insulin. It lasts you however long it lasted you. And Mr. Scott and I, we've been talking about, like usually, grandma, grandpa got their insulin on credit, had to go in at the end of the week and pay for it. Just like you got your groceries from the little neighborhood store that you needed every day. You didn't need a credit card. Somebody to come down and co-sign for you, put your house up for for a lemon and a lime. I mean, what's your thoughts on I mean, it just seems like it's
As
part
you're
of.
talking, I am thinking, you remember that song? It all comes down to the money. Money, 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 money. That that is what comes to mind when you say that. Um, you got to think. At the end of the day, the United States is a corporation that is a business that their main focus is generating money. It is not America. America is the land. America is the northern portion of the land that we are on. Um but the United States is a business. It is a LLC. And at the end of the day, what do you do when you start an LLC? You're trying to generate money, correct? So
But see,
everything
but here's the difference, though. See, when Mr. Scott and I went to the pharmacy, it was McGregor's pharmacy. It was Dennis Mitchell's and Sons pharmacy. It wasn't CVS. It wasn't
but
corporate
Walgreens.
America. Corporate America hadn't got into the pharmacy business back then.
you gotta think they are up against marijuana being legalized. I just watched a documentary on Netflix about psychedelics being legalized. So this is not Reagan era pharmacy. This is not Clinton era pharmacy. This is pharmacy that's trying to stay ahead of the things that can heal people. You talking about weed actually has a healing mechanism in it. Now, for some people it can heighten the paranoia and anxiety and all that. But if you're taking the right type of weed, if you're using the right type of cannabis, whether it's oil or whatever the case may be, it has healing mechanisms. That's why it's patented by the United States. You know what I'm saying? Like you gotta look at the patents. You gotta kind of follow the paper trail when it comes to big business. So when you got marijuana with growers, with distributors and the business of that, and then you get the psychedelics, which are natural healing plants. In most cases, these are not we're not talking about things that they got to manufacture, because pharmacy is science. Pharmacy is what when we say witchcraft, we think about witches with potions and oils and doing all these things, but that's what the pharmacy is. This is the
Pharmacies
pharmacy
are
for real, for
potions.
real.
That's what they are. X
They
plus
are
Y has,
mixing chemicals.
yeah.
They are mixing chemicals and sedatives and all of these other things in order to make a drug that will work perfect for whatever you got going on. And then they feed it to you with these pleasant commercials that you see people rolling around in the flowers and dancing in the sun with 1,000,001 negative side effects. So you got to understand who you're talking about and what you're dealing with. I mean, even this conversation, in my opinion, can be dangerous. Look at how they handle employees of the CDC. Anytime somebody from the CDC got some shit to say, they come up dead. I mean, like, let's just keep it a buck. Every time somebody from the CDC say, "Hold on, something ain't right," they be missing. The CDC is right here in Atlanta. They be missing. They done found plenty of people in the last 10. I won't even say 10 years. I'll say in the last 5 years, they done found at least 3 or 4, and 10, probably about 10 or more. So you're talking about going up against big pharmacy, who is doing all the advertising on the buying up all the advertising ads, space on TV. They are funding
Yeah,
all of
and
these,
we
and
and we
then
pay for that. And we pay for that.
we pay to see their advertisements by
Yeah.
paying for the services that we get. But there was I think I talked about this last time we was on. There was a clip of a Texas official or somebody on the sidelines that was talking about how the big business in Texas are in the leadership's pocket. So they really running stuff. It's like lobbyists. They are all people. There is a whole sea of people that are funding campaigns, funding, you know what I'm saying, all of these different narratives so that they can have their way when it's time to have their way. So it's a lot of things that won't go past and won't get through because the simple fact that it's gonna mess up somebody's money.
Well, yeah, we've definitely seen that, and anybody that thinks that, like you said, America, well, not America, but the United States is run on the premise of profit making. So
Hmm.
that's just plain and simple. But Mr. Scott, we've seen a lot of controversy over the prices of gasoline. Now, gasoline in California has probably went down about $1.02 a gallon since the last time I talked to you, but that's still like right around 4.80, close to $5 in most spots. I think it got up as far as 5.85. Maybe if you went, I don't know about further up the coast, but around here, yeah, that was about it. But there's a lot of controversy over once again starting to drill on indigenous people's land. Have you heard anything more about that, especially up there in your neck of the woods?
Well, yeah, these big pipelines. There's been a bunch of brouhaha about going through North Dakota with pipelines up into Canada. And I mean, again, we've said it, and I say so much of this stuff is such a scam. I mean, they'll horrify you, get you scared on TV about gas going on. We don't have no gas. And I'm saying, well, wait a minute, this is the same gas that was in here yesterday. That's in the pumps. Why all of a sudden this same gas you got, all of a sudden it's gone up $1? It's the same. This you haven't got no more gas since the other day. What? Why? But see, that's well, as you know, as Dr. Casey says, the business part of it, it just hits us from all sides. It hits us from the insurance companies. It hits us from, and like she says, the lobbyists and these people that make it law. James, you and I used to go buy a car at a dealership. You didn't have to have no insurance to buy the car. I mean, you could get the car and you on your own to go get you some insurance, shop around and get some. But now you're not going to go off of that lot until they verify what your insurance is. Yeah, and see, this is how strong these people are to keep a hold on you for every little thing that they know you need. The commodities, they say they got to go way over to Ukraine to get wheat. They got more wheat here in Minnesota and Iowa and Wisconsin that well, they got more. When you drive from here to Chicago, you see nothing but a whole lot of wheat and stuff growing. No problem, right there. But all of a sudden, no, they got to go get some the Ukraine, and because they're doing that, and they
Well,
tell
we have
you all
that wheat
things.
that wheat that you see, Mister Scott. See, we can't buy that wheat. That wheat there is to go to Germany, to go to England, to go to South America. You can't buy that wheat. That wheat that you grow there. Plus, that also means that you got to pay some black farmers.
Hmm.
I mean, come on, Mr. Scott. Really? You gonna start paying black people now?
Well, they're going to sell it to where they get the most money from.
Of
They're going to sell it
course.
to where they get the most money from. I mean, so that there we keep getting back to that. We keep
But,
getting back
but, but,
to
but what happened to taking care of your own first?
well, that's been out the window.
It's-
That's been out the window. I mean, look at these people that get now all this weather things that are happening. These tornadoes, big trees fall on your house. They say, "Well, where did the tree come from?" I say, "It come right from the yard. Where the hell could it sky?" But no, they may not cover that, or you're in a floodplain. So no, you don't have no
You gotta
insurance for
have the
that.
extra
You don't.
insurance. Hmm.
yeah, yeah. You should have cut that. You should have trimmed that tree before it got that heavy to fall on your house. You know, maybe you should have had one of them conversations with the good Lord and told him, I can't pay my insurance this month, Lord. Take care of my house. But Dr. Casey, you know, uh, like you said, nowadays, with all these weather systems and whatnot, your tree fall on your house, it's your fault. And I did I guess I had to be. It was probably after I came back from Vietnam where I really realized that they had a clause in your insurance. Uh, what do they call it? Gods by nature or
Like
by
Active
any
God,
natural
active God.
disaster.
right, right,
Yeah,
right.
active
Yeah,
God.
you know. So I mean, that covers rain, snow, sleet. I mean, what's not an act of God? I mean, I mean,
Listen, the everything has a loophole, and you just got to be smart enough to figure out the loophole. So even though they got it listed like that, I'm sure that there's a loophole. They make stuff work the way they want it to work when they want it to work that way. Even like what Mrs. Scott said about the gas prices. If I'm not mistaken, the fuel industry made billions in profit just recently reported. So if they made billions in profit, then that means that the gas really wasn't that high. They just wanted the profit.
that is what profit means. But I mean, hey, that's one of the things. Like you said, when you try to explain that to people, it's like, okay, well, my gas was $6 and 25 cents this month. Well, do you realize that $3 of that went to for the profit of the
Hmm.
gas company?
Hmm.
Not for them to break
The
even, but
markup.
for the profit of the gas company.
It's
You know,
almost like when you go buy something at a place like Walmart or Target when it's marked down, but they didn't mark it up so much that the marked down price ain't really marked down. It just, you know what I'm saying? It's scheming to get you. It make you think it's marked down, but it's really the real price.
yeah. I mean, seriously, now, how can you buy something at 75% off? When you think of some of the deductions in price, okay, minus 25%, minus 50%. Well,
Even when it's out of season, that means that that's the value of it in reality, and then they didn't mark it up that much in order for them to reach their profit margin. Because a lot of stuff, it's not as expensive to make. It's almost like, okay, so right now I am editing and getting my book ready so that I can take it mainstream. I got 6 books. They go all going mainstream soon. So I was telling my cousin earlier who's in jail, and he's like, "Well, why don't you hire somebody to do it?" And I'm like, "Hire somebody to do some shit that I could do myself? That just don't make sense to me. It doesn't sit right in my soul when it's something simple enough for me to go and read something and be able to do it." Because at the end of the day, something it's almost like getting an LLC. Something that costs $50, somebody's going to charge you 500 to do something that's only going to take them the same 5-10 minutes that it was going to take you, but then they put that profit margin up, just really for gain, really for greed. So to hire somebody to do something that you can do yourself is no different than a lot of these clothes. It don't cost that much to make shit. They just said that they finding kids working in places they ain't supposed to be working at, so they not paying that much for the labor. They getting the labor cheap. The materials are normally cheap and inexpensive, but that cost value, the price point is based on brand name, is based on supply and demand. I was supply when I was in the military. So that supply and demand is heavy because guess what? If there is a demand and you can create a low supply, then I can charge you out the yin yang because I mean it's a demand. So if it's a demand, and that's like the scare tactics. When you talk about the scare tactics that they use to fear mong and the fear mongering, they are literally sending people into panic in order to be able to increase the inflation. Ain't just inflation because it's inflated. You know what did that? They made it so that you can't afford it
uh, so
Yeah,
because
and
it
so they're
did.
trying to get
uh,
you. What they
uh,
do now, though, see, is they get you to do the work. Okay, now I have these pictures here. I had a cousin that passed away in Atlanta, and I got a bunch of pictures when she used to come up here, and I wanted to send the pictures to my cousins down in Georgia. And so I talked to my son, and he tells me, okay, just scan it, create a file, and do that. I don't do that. I mean, I don't know how to. He said, well, that's all you got to do is just blah, 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 blah. And so, I mean, I tried to do it. I mean, I got a scanner and all this stuff here, but I ended up having to go to Kinko. And then when I get to the Kinko place, they tell it. They say, here's the self-service. You do it yourself. See, but I said, well, you work here. You work here. Why don't you, isn't that what you're supposed to do? No, no, here, there's the thing here. Put your credit card in there. Do this, do this. See, so they got you doing all the work.
Well, hold on, Mr. Scott.
And they got to do the work.
Once again, I'm gonna kind of date us, but Mr. Scott, do you remember when the sweaters came out that had the patch on the elbow? You remember those? The Bill Cosby sweaters, the Huxtable sweaters that we used to call them. They had a little patch. Nowadays, kids go and buy jeans that are already ripped up, got half the, all the way down to the. Why are you paying $100 for jeans that are already ripped up? Maybe it's just me, but I'm kind of about that, like you are about the rap music. There's some things that just don't make no damn sense. But
but yeah. Well, again, the game. That's their game. See, as long as they can figure out, they're trying to stay ahead of. If they make you believe. Man, there was a time, James, I would never think of getting dressed up or go to church or somewhere in some jeans. Let alone they tore up. Let alone they tore up. I mean, come on. They got us believing in jeans and tennis. That's fashion now. And then people wait in line, get Jordans, $500, $300 to get them. Bunch of foolishness.
We had the faded jeans, and then we had the tie-dye jeans, and then the tight jeans. I mean, it's like you say, it's all about the money.
People pay for the brand name in most cases because I mean, like anytime you get, I think I seen Balenciaga or Gucci or Louis Vuitton, one of them selling $3,000 paper clips. What the hell am I paying $3,000 for a paper clip when I go right down the street and get a whole box of paper clips for $5? 10 now because they didn't upcharge. But that's crazy. But people will go and buy the craziest thing just so that they can rep somebody else's name because that's a name. That's somebody's last name, and people don't, they just buy into it because a lot of what we see, I believe, is just okay. So if you've never had nothing, and then you finally get a little bit of money, you are trying to prove to everybody that you got money now. So in order to prove you got money, now I got to look like money. Now I got to spend this. Now I got to do that. And and then they believe, and this is not the way the mindset is set up. And some of it is just the conditioning and the programming from you have to look a certain way to get a certain job. You got to do this to get that. So they're trying to attract success by wearing $3,500 shoes or $5,000 shirt. And normally it does attract success because the broke people, the people that can't afford it, is admiring the people that can afford it. And they don't realize that when you think about scammers, it's like I go take a class and then as soon as I get finished with that class, I'm gonna sell you the class. Even though I don't know shit that I just learned, I ain't really been through nothing that I just learned, but I just learned it. And now I know enough that I got the books that I can teach you it. And people will go to the person that just learned it, that don't know nothing about it, and spend big money because they think if I get in this person's class, I could be just like them. Everybody can't be just like that person. Everybody is not meant to be just like that person. But in the mindset, if I connect with them, then I can have success like them. Man, I think I've saved myself so much from being just around the wrong people because I kind of don't subscribe to all of that. I don't wear like super expensive stuff. Most of the time I don't be trying to impress everybody because the people that you have to impress are the people that won't fool with you if you didn't have all of those things. And those are not genuine people. So we're talking about It really is like gold versus gold plated. There's a lot of gold plated people out here trying to act like they solid gold, and that's just not the case. And it doesn't stop or start with them. This is just the way of the world as we see it now. But this is also why you got a lot of people that feel like that they are not feel like more people are suicidal, more people are depressed, more people are comparing themselves to people that's not even doing as good as they really think these people is doing. I mean, you talking about relationship goals based on people that they don't know. I mean, it's one thing to see a picture and say, "Oh, I would like to take a picture like that." But you got people that setting their whole relationship goals, their whole life goals based on pictures that they see from somebody else that's really just the highlight reel. And all of that plays back into what people spending their money on, what people, you know what I'm saying? All of those things, it's like a trickle down effect because in order to get success, you got to look like money. But when you attract that, you're not attracting what actually is meant for you. You're attracting leeches. You're attracting people that need something more than you're attracting something that's actually going to help you produce something.
Yeah, a lot of that
People fall for
is
this hook, line, and sinker.
Hmm.
You
yeah,
know, the
a
And it's
lot of
Kardashians.
like
The
every single time.
uh,
Kardashians.
yeah, a
Kanye
lot of it
West
is.
selling all these old foolish clothes. People got to have them clothes because they see Kanye West, big old boots and all this old foolishness.
Well,
People
come
got
on,
to buy it because they see it.
come on, Mr. Scott. What was? Why did you first buy Jello pudding pops? It ain't just started with Kanye West. You,
Right.
Well,
you-
That's been the
they didn't
marketing
taste
scheme
too
for a
bad,
very long
you know.
time.
I mean, they didn't taste too bad, you know. So, you know,
but, but I want to talk about a couple of serious topics before I get into this Black Bill of Rights. And I think I'm going to start with the young man that was found in the attic of the white supremacist, Mr. James White. Now, this man was a known white supremacist. Uh, Supposedly, the young black man had been taken to his house to a party. This is the second body that was found in his house, although this is the first black man that was found dead in his house. But at first, they ruled it a suicide. Then the coroner comes back and says, well, no, it was not a suicide. It was death by some type of bru- instrument. And supposedly, I think he was shot in the back of the head. But uh, this man has not been charged despite the coroner's inquest. And his parents and his family are wondering why there has been no further action taken. Now, one thing I wanted to note here, because at no time did I see Al Sharpton or Ben Crump there.
You know they chase money cases.
Well, to see, of course, now, that'll take us to our second topic, Breonna Taylor,
Oh,
and I mean, of course, the first one to show up on the TV is the attorney, Ben. You know, but Mr. Scott, what's your take on this? I mean, you, I mean, it's not quite as bad as well, maybe it is. I don't know. The guy that's sleeping and gets shot, in the back of the head by the police, and they let the police go. But I mean, Mr. Scott, if they found a teenage white guy's body in your attic, uh, I think there might be a little trouble for
under
you.
the jail.
yeah,
Okay. You ain't getting
right.
out. You don't pass go. You going straight to jail.
Exactly. Wouldn't be no protests and all that stuff. No, they just drag my black ass out, and that would be the end of it. But see, this is the whole psychology of this stuff now. Is like up here
Mhm.
in Minneapolis. It's all if you get shot by the police, there's this whole cadre of people that come out. Okay, every day, black on blacks getting shot. every single day over on the north side, over in this. I don't see no protests then. I don't see no. I don't see you out in the street. I don't see them. But it's only what they've made this thing is to into a narrative. It's to a,
Mhm.
and the narrative is not really about the law and what's right and what's legal. It's just what these people want to jump on. I mean, I don't see where all these
They pick
people
and
come
choose.
from. All of a sudden, there'll be 1,000 people at the governor's mansion behind these kind of things. But when you see something in your neighborhood happen, where's the protest then? Let's do something about this. Let's fix our neighborhood. But that's not the emphasis.
Well, the whole there is, man, it's so many different narratives within that, because you got to think about, when you think about snitching and not wanting to put black people in jail because what's going to happen. And I understand to an extent. However, I also believe that I think that we need to police our own more. But a lot of times, the narrative is based off of fear. It's still fear based, but it's also, just eh, it's a psychological thing, and a lot of the black people that go out and protest for these things, they don't understand the psychological warfare that they're involved in, because a lot of times the killings are fear based when it comes to a white person killing a black person, because it keeps you in line, and then the more they show it, then guess what, then that makes you, know what I'm saying, what's gonna happen if you know what I'm saying. So it's like keeping you in line almost. It's a conditioning of the mind, because if I show you what I do, it's like when they used to hang black people and put them on the cross, burn them at the when they burn witches at the stake, to when they was burning slaves on the cross. It's all a display, because if I can display this to you, then in the back of your mind, you know what I'm capable of. So it's a certain level that you won't. It's you know what I'm saying. A certain threshold that you won't cross, because you already know what's gonna happen to you.
It's kind of interesting that you say that, because when you think
Even
of
in the black
fear,
community.
well, but I'm kind of to take it back on a historical perspective, striking fear into the heart of your enemy, such as scalping, which really didn't come from the Indians, but we'll put it on them anyway. But that that was another type of person that you know initiated that. Let's say
Mhm.
but they might take a finger, or but you didn't desecrate a body because it was part of you going to meet the Great Spirit. And whether we want to admit it or not, the indigenous people were not savages. They were very religious people. They just happened to they didn't believe in uh, was it Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. They had their own type of deity. But you know uh, Mr. Scott, when you look back upon some of the things that happened, there was a time when, well, it wasn't that long ago. When we had supremacists walking through Charlotte talking about Jews shall not replace us. You had different rallies, specifically that were made to initiate the white vote and make sure that the black brown vote, and in some cases, in a lot of cases, even women were still regulated to second class citizenship. Mr. Scott, has you know has the agenda for your political candidates changed any within the last 6 weeks? I know you guys had a program. Was it Saturday about the Minnesota primary?
Yeah, we're doing the primary voting is tomorrow, and so we're actually supposed to be doing a special show tomorrow to talk about there's some very contentious races with Ilhan and Don Samuels and some of the guests that we've had. But these politicians, again, they tell you what this time of year they tell you what they want, what they think you want to hear, so you can get their vote. And we just haven't seen any action from them here. We haven't seen any change over at the George Floyd Square. Somebody got shot there last night. Somebody got killed there just last night because they've allowed renegade people over there to kind of run the square. You can go over there and get all the drugs. You can get all this, anything you want there, and don't be around nowhere near there at night. But they don't do anything about it. You know, clean it up, make it back to normal. Get the buses going back down that street instead of driving all through the neighborhood, all crazy. Everything's all just topsy turvy. And I just don't have confidence in these politicians that really know what the hell's going on. They say that they want to talk to the community. Well, I never get invited. I never hear nothing about coming to some of the meetings. And some of these people, I don't know where they come from. I don't know who they are. But everybody's able to find their own little racket. And I think that they've made the political thing their own racket. A lot of these people that are here, it's just not the city at all. And I think a lot of it, James, as we talk about JK3, we've seen too much. We've seen behind the curtain. We've seen how things can actually be, and we continue to see this played out in front of us on TV. It's like a cartoon almost. I look at these people, the supposed politicians and now they're trying to elbow us out of here with LBGG, WXYZ, all these kind of people. Well, hell, they've always been here. They don't bother anybody. I don't have no problem with them. They don't bother me. I don't bother them. But all of a sudden now they've got to throw this on TV. They got to throw it in their commercials. They got to throw all this stuff at you, then bombard you with. They make you say, oh, well, that's not the way I want to be. So you're out of touch. All of a sudden now I'm out of touch now because I
That's
don't
a whole
I
narrative.
listen to Dave Chappelle.
Well, now, Mr. Scott, I want to ask you because Dr. Casey mentioned it, but she didn't really go into it, and she was talking about policing our own neighborhoods. Now, from the couple of times that I've been on your show, that I've talked about police reform. A lot of people get that mixed up with defund the police, but
Mm-hmm.
I still stick by my guns. But anyway, one thing that we had as youngsters is you had respect for the people that wore the uniform, and you had basically a respect for law. You didn't go in your neighbor's house and uh, well, in most cases, if you did something, you did it outside your neighborhood because I mean, if people in the neighborhood found out, you wanted to be spotless in the neighborhood. I was the preacher's kid in the neighborhood. What I was outside the neighborhood was quite something else. But I had well, especially while grandma was alive, because grandma thought the sun rose and set, where. So, while grandma was alive, I couldn't be that thug. When I come to grandma's house, I was respectful. Like you say, I was, if she wanted to go to church on Easter Sunday, I got dressed and took her to church, whatever, but you had a certain amount of respect. Like you say, buses, are taking a detour. The neighborhood has been taken over by people of unsavory characters or whatever. Do you remember what happened in L.A. when the Black Panthers told the drug dealers and the pimps and that like, hey, y'all can do whatever you want to do, but you can't do it here. What happened to that sense of community, Mr. Scott?
You know, I really don't know, but there is no such thing right now. I mean, we all went to school together. I mean, we all went to a church in the neighborhood. We all did the same thing. We played on teams together. We those kind of things, the camaraderie type things are gone. I mean, they've like the tennis courts and the basketball courts now they've even tore all that down with soccer. They're playing soccer now. They got I could care less about soccer. I don't watch it. I read the sports page avidly, but when they're talking about the soccer team, I could care. That, but this is how everything has just it's just changed before your very eyes. It's just not, it's just not a it's not a community thing. I could go see baseball teams, little kids playing. I could just go stop and watch a game. They don't do that anymore. Now if you want to play baseball, you got to pay big money to be on some kind of team. You got to travel. Just don't have just a thing where people can do stuff just for the fun of it. Just doing that with your own friends, with your neighbors. Me and my brother used to go to grandma's house, and sometimes we'd have to take a cab, and we would take a cab to her house. And everywhere we went, we had our bat, our ball, and our gloves. Everywhere we went, we took that with us. And so as soon as we hit the door at grandma's house, the bell's ringing. The guys coming out. Yeah, Scott's here. Let's go get a game. 3 or 4. Next thing we're at the park till nighttime, and come on back, and have some watermelon, whatever grandma got for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It wasn't no problem. Street lights come on. They knew it's time to come home. Then you got to, just meander back to the house. But we don't have any home training. We don't have any. It's all out the window. People be trained by the TV. People are trained by the TV. Whatever they see, they want to do that. I hate to say monkey see, monkey do, but I mean,
Monkeypox
this is
too.
what.
But see, once again, that goes back to ancient history because, Mr. Scott, when we were talking about latchkey kids, it was a sense of independence. Oh, ma can go to work and I can be at home by myself. I got my own key to, see how that turned out.
So, I'll interject here. I think some of it is, well, one, when you think about the structure that used to be in place, a lot of it was, I hate to say it, but like slave mentality based, because the fear that was used, the discipline that was used was the same discipline that was used with the slaves to keep them in line and in check. But then if you take away the structure of having the father and the dad in the home that's actually the disciplinarian, and then the mother who is able to kind of counteract and balance that, then you're removing the amount of respect, because now if a young boy or a young girl see their mama getting running through men, or men running through her, if they see all of these different characteristics from their mother with no father figure present, then there is no balance. There is no, a lot of children lose respect. But then when the father is missing and then the mother vanishes too, then who is left to actually teach the children the morals, the values, the respect, and actually make them be disciplined? A lot of kids is running the streets because they don't have no latchkey turned into on my own. Like it went from, you might be home for a couple of hours to you might not see your parent for a couple of days. I know for me, that's how it was when I was growing up. My mother would be gone for like, I let's just say I consider myself, I had my first apartment about 13. My mama, I mean, it was her apartment, but she was living with her boyfriend. So I could do whatever I wanted to do. She worked at GM, so I would have boys over and she'd be like, all right, guys, see you later. I'm off to work. Like, man, like, what if I was wild? I just so happened not to be a wild child. I had enough scare tactics within my family. Like I had older cousins that was either pregnant or, you know what I'm saying, just doing so much to where I was like in
Yeah.
line. But a lot of people, they don't have that. They don't have the reinforcements, because when dads wasn't around, then you had older cousins. But if everybody on crack, if everybody snorting powder, if everybody taking heroin and all these other drugs, that got them dismissive and not there or being present, or even just to say, hey, I care about you enough to say something to you. But a lot of times you dealing with people that want to be the kids' friends. So if you want to be the kids' friends and then you're not disciplining them, you're not saying nothing to them, you're not correcting them, then they think that nobody can say nothing to them. That makes them a lawless individual where they feel like they can do what they want to do. And if somebody say something, I'm gonna go off and I'm gonna say this or I'm gonna do that. And then we're not even talking about the parents that if you say something to their kid, then it's a problem but they don't understand the value of care. They don't understand the value of community. It's a lot of things that falter off, especially once your grandma start dying. And then, and then sometimes even the grandmothers, like, what you find is that the structure of the family back then was a little bit more complex. The grandmothers was present, but then the grandmothers was off the chain in their day too. So it was just, you don't have a lot of people to teach the morals, the values, the respect, establish discipline. And then when you take away, and I hate to always say this, but when you take away um being automatically enrolled through a draft into the military where you are disciplined. You gonna find some discipline in that draft because you gotta go. You gotta, you know what I'm saying? It's certain things you gotta do. So when you remove all of that, you put the PTSD in there, you put the drugs in there, and all of those other things, there's a lot of things that's going on where who is there caring for the child? Who is there making sure, okay, if you're going through something, let me help you get through that. If you're like, for young women, how many young women that you know may have started their cycle and their mother is not telling them about the management and maintenance of having a cycle, or a little boys
Wait,
is,
wait,
you know what I'm saying, they reaching puberty and they're not getting those. It's a lot of supplemental
oh,
things that children need.
hold on a minute. Yeah, now, you see, I just saw a commercial
Hmm.
last night, where there's a mother telling her daughter, well, you don't have to do this the old fashioned way. Here's a pair of panties that take care of that for you. Now, as a man, I don't need to see that in the middle of my boxing match or
I
whatever the
mean,
hell
now
I happen to be
men should
watching.
be able to help their daughters too. So it's not, but
Hey, I'm all for that. I'm all for that. But there are certain things that I mean, I don't want to know when my sister's cycle is. I don't want to know nothing about that. I don't want her to know who I'm necessarily having sex with. I mean, I'm just saying, but one of the things that I find, and Mr. Scott, you can take Dr. Casey's side, or you might have one of your own. But when you talk about the family structure back in the day, usually the grandmother was an older woman, maybe, at least somewhere approaching probably her late 40s, early 50s.
Mhm.
Okay. So
I don't know about that.
well, I'm not, I'm talking about 1947. You don't even know nothing about that.
I mean, no, because if you think about back then, I got a grandmother that had damn 10 kids. She
yeah,
didn't start having those 10 kids when she was in her 20s and 30s. A lot of
no,
times, that's how you get these generations where the grandmother, you got six generation of people because the great grandmama was a hot pocket and she was having babies when she was 15, 16. That's when they started. And
yeah,
then
but
they
she,
had
but
babies
she
for
also,
20 years.
had a certain reputation around the neighborhood. And that was also, that I think back in those days we called them fast.
I mean,
You
yeah,
know,
now let me say this.
but no, well, hold on. But what I'm trying to get to is nowadays you got grandmothers that's 30, 32, 33. You got people, they're great grandmothers by the time they're 45. My
That's
sister
not,
got,
I don't think
my,
that that's uncommon.
no, it's not, but I'm saying, I think that because it's so common today, that's one of the structures that we have lost. Like you said, kids are no longer, they no longer have that fear of family. Usually, if if back in the day, or even probably in Mr. Scott's time, if you were a teenager and you got a job, maybe you was a paper boy or whatever you did, you did that to maybe get you a little extra money to go have a little fun, because you couldn't get that money from, maybe grandma or grandpa didn't have it that day, or maybe you just wanted to do something on your own. But nowadays you have children, 12, 11, that are the primary breadwinners in their family. How in the hell are you going to tell your 11-year-old kid that he can't do such and such, and he walking around with a couple $1,000s in his pocket, and you got to beg him for money?
See, but that's the
And
difference.
and then you going to say, well, I don't know where he got his money from. Come on now, please.
But the what you're talking about leads me to how I feel about this Roe Roe v. Wade, because the narrative that is being pushed is fighting for abortions more than they're talking about. Let's be more abstinent. Let's be more protective about how we are, what I'm saying, handling our bodies. Let's, what I'm saying, be more selective about our partners. They're not pushing that. They're not pushing, holding yourself with honor, what I'm saying, valuing you and your body, and making sure you're not just out here getting pregnant. They are more concerned with people being able to kill babies, fetuses, more than they are with teaching women, or even like all the campaign commercials. Everything is, you deserve the right to kill a baby. Why not try to prevent it so we don't have to go there, versus weighing on that? Like they leaning heavy on the ability to have abortions more than practicing safe sex. Like,
Yeah.
what happened to the safe sex narrative? Because I mean, I don't hear it no more.
Well, remember we had a whole generation that was, I got, maybe I should, but anyway, free love. Everybody go out, make all the babies, uh, like the Indians, you put them up like pelts on the wall. I mean, come on,
See, but
so
But still,
that's
there was some type of, we've lost the ability to have any kind of
accountability,
family structure or
responsibility.
accountability. I mean, I look at my own situation. My grandmother, she's born in 1910. Okay, my mom was born in 1930, 50. So we're all 20 years apart. I mean, my grandmother and my mother, they were very close. She was the only kid. And so she had 5 kids with dad. There was 5 of us. One of them died at birth. But it was always it just felt it was a structural thing. I was either with her or I was at home. And I
Mhm,
could go to either place and I was at home. Either I had a room at grandma's house. I could go there and just stay sometime when I was in high school and study or do whatever I was going to do. But we had structure within our own family. Her sister lived right down the street from her. As a matter of fact, her sister lived next door to George Foreman, the heavyweight champion, right down the street in Minneapolis. His first wife was here from Minneapolis here. She was one of my wife's very good friends. But we had a structure in this neighborhood where, I mean, I used to know where everybody lived in this the South Side neighborhood here. There's very few now. It's very different. But these differences have put so much stuff on TV that these kids are exposed to.
mhm,
The parents really aren't as, I mean, haven't seen all these dysfunctional families in the child protection area where there's been several fathers, several dynamics, several
mhm,
all the things that they have to do just to get the kids in the school and keep them in the school, and they've got to work, and then this dad's this and this dad's, I mean, it's really a real rat race that we're in our communities now, and it's played out like the mental health issues. I go on, sometimes I'll be on Facebook and I'll just see people in Walmart or Popeyes. They're tearing up the place, going in there just tearing up Popeyes, jumping over the counter at the people because they didn't give them the fries right. Or you know people are at such a wit's end and so prone to
mhm,
doing things out of, I guess, out of frustration.
mm.
You can say PTSD, you can say a lot of things, but they get 12, 13, 14, 15, get their hands on a gun. no problem using it. I mean, so we're in such a lawless thing right now, and with no respect for police. I used to know all the police in the neighborhood coming up. I'd see them at the games. They'd be at the football games. They'd be at the gas station, sitting in there drinking coffee with the people there. They see you come in the gas station. Oh, that's Scotty's son. Blah 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 blah. But once we got away from that, and once we get into an area, I mean, a lot of people used to come here. I used to see in child protection. They come from Chicago. They stop in Milwaukee, get a check in Milwaukee, come here and get a check, and go on back to Chicago. I mean, that's not
Some of it
roots,
is.
not sitting down. Yeah,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I'm just saying, not coming to a place to set in roots to for opportunities to get your home, get yourself settled with the kid. That's not the thought process now.
No,
A
that's the
lot
old
of
American dream. Go ahead,
yeah.
Doctor.
What the emotional intelligence is down. So back then, I think there was a. I mean, like with boys, it has always been they couldn't show or express or anything like that. But nobody talked about anything, and the trickle down effect of not being able to talk about your feelings, not being able to process, not being able to have some type of outlet is really bad, because now that's what we're seeing, the frustration. The pandemic and being on quarantine for all the time, that didn't do nothing but make it worse, because you're dealing with people who already have emotional intelligent issues, and now they've been locked away. They have been isolated and disassociated from people. So now their tolerance level has been limited. And now you have an intolerance for other human beings. I mean, I have an intolerance for people. So, but if you're that way, and then somebody does something to piss you off, and you don't know how to handle somebody doing something to piss you off, the level of frustration is quite different. I mean, the amount of people that we see killing each other and just dying now, it seems it has gotten worse. Like at first I was just like, man, we just see it more. It ain't worse, but no, now it's worse because people are doing foolish, like crazy, like the most like outlandish things, because when they get emotionally charged, they don't know how to release it. They don't know how to process it. They don't know how to deal with it. And the first thing a lot of people want to do is act out. Now, this is where I could say video games and all of that, because in a lot of the what we're seeing, it is nothing but people being able to act out. They don't have to consider responsibility, accountability, or the consequences of any of their actions.
Yeah, they don't have people to rein them in. They
Mhm.
don't have guidance. They don't have, they'll follow a certain track. People will do learned behavior, and it's like, my grandmother and the switch. She ruled by the switch, and so that was. I mean, that's just how that rolled. When I'm staying with her one day, and she was trying to get me up to go to school. I'd been out partying or something. I'm in high school, and she actually came upstairs and started whooping me. Said, "Get your butt up and go." And I just grabbed a belt and said, "This woman can't." And I just thought, I said, "And I'm going to get my butt and get up out of here. If nothing else, I'm leaving this house and I'm heading up to school." You know, but they don't have people to really rein them in. And I've just seen it in so many situations where people, the young, are on their own. I used to see 10, 11 years old talking to a public defender or what. I said, "Well, where's the parent?" "Oh, well, we don't know where the parent it is," and blah, blah, blah. And they send the kid to St. John's Home for Children or whatever. No parent involved. And so they're used to being this institutional thing, going to court. They're just laughing about it. Wasn't no big deal going to court. But for me, oh, my dad used to say, "You go to court, you just stay there." I never come, which I ended up going to jail. He had to, if you're a black man, it's gonna happen. So and he did come and talk, but I had people around to try to rein you in. And this is what we're just seeing, a group of people that are they really just don't have things to rein them in. They don't have the community buffers. It was more than just the families. It was your, as we say, it was your community, people you knew around you that supported you. But that's just not, it's not the case anymore. And
Well,
so we have to adapt. I'm not sure how we adapt to this because I don't really see a really big end with the way that their economy. They're saying all these jobs are supposed to be out there now.
I
They
think
said
they
they,
lying.
they can't find people to work. Yeah, say
I
they
think
can't
they
find enough
lying.
people to do this stuff. Well, what do all these people see?
I don't think it's as many jobs as they acting like. They just I think they're basing that off of the amount of jobs that was lost. So there's a certain amount of jobs that should be
be
available.
available, right?
But literally, it can't be all these jobs if people ain't got no can't find no job. Like how do you not be able to find a job if it's so many jobs? I don't think there are that many jobs available. I think that a lot of companies close. They're
Yeah,
restructuring.
that's
They
what
they
they
got
keep saying.
this AI.
They'll pay you 20. They give you $20 an hour to go to Burger King. Supposedly,
I mean, I just seen a sign at
that's
McDonald's say
what they
they
tell
they
you.
hired at like 15. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
but there's also that thing of one, everybody think they're entrepreneurs now, and then two, a lot of people are ashamed to work at certain jobs just because of the place more so than the amount that they can earn.
yeah. I mean, but
Yeah.
I can say, and I'm sure, Brother Williams, you'll agree with me. There's probably not a fast food joint here in San Diego that doesn't have a sign that says we're hiring. You know, uh,
And people
so
waiting on this next pandemic check. They
yeah,
hoping this monkeypox pop off so that they can get some monkeypox
Monkey.
check.
but I want to discuss something that I guess I should have been aware of it a long time ago, but I've become more aware of it in the last couple of weeks, probably because of the political climate more than anything else, along with the gentleman that has finally started a union at Amazon. Now, I'm not, saying that I'm a big union guy or nothing like that, but I do think that people have the right to organize, whether you want to call it the union or whatever you want to call it. I mean, you know. But I was looking at what's called the Black Workers Bill of Rights. And Brother Williams, I'm sure you're much more familiar with this than I am. Can you tell us how this kind of came about?
Unfortunately, I am not as more familiar with it than you. I
Okay.
am I am aware of it, but as far as the history and the plight to to make that available or push that on to the people, I am not. I mean, I can speak on the generalization in terms of the items on the bill and my take on it.
Well, let's. Dr. Casey, do you know anything about the history of this?
Nah, nah.
Okay.
I've never been in a union my entire work life.
What I know about unions was they were not started as they appeared to be for the best of the people. It was really some more flim flam, really behind the history of how unions came about. But yeah,
Well, when I first moved out here in California, and as a matter of fact, I retired from Vons, which is Kroger's. So, the food service workers had their own union out here. But I was going to go over this, and a lot of this, I mean, to me, I don't understand why we need a document. Well, anyway, uh, number one, article number one, the right to organize. Um, Brother Williams, you want to start there?
Yeah, I love to start there because basically when I look at the these, to me what it basically stands for, and especially when you talk about the right to organize, it just stands for recognizing that the people do have power. It kind of even goes in the same aspect of where some of the approaches that we go into with the Black Panther Party. So to state and it kind of like even bagging up to where you were saying you don't understand why you would even have to put this in writing. The deal is so many of our people are in positions to where they feel like they do not have the power to make change. And so when you talk about the right to organize, it basically lets corporations know, um, let people know that the corporations cannot prevent you from being able to organize around having the right to organize or the right to take a stand and request better wages, better way of life, equal access. And so it's really just addressing the fact that we do have people power, and knowing that we have people power, don't allow yourself to be isolated and feel like there's nothing you can do but to basically be tormented and deal with the circumstances surrounding unemployment. And so it's a call to me. I look at it as a call to action and a call to awareness of the fact that if the people pull themselves together and come together, then we can make change, and we can bring the corporate structure to accountability.
Dr. Casey, this is something
But,
that
but to
you
me,
always talk
it's
about.
duplicative. It's
Uh,
duplicative. I mean, we already have these rights, supposedly. We have the right to organize. We have the right to do what we want to do. But all of a sudden now they want to list all these things that we already got the right for. We done fought for this the day one getting over here to get these things. I mean, I look at this Bill of Rights. I mean, the right to equitable wages and compensation that's owed. Of course, if I go to work, you goddamn right, he's gonna pay me. I mean, this stuff is really. I mean,
Well, well,
I mean, there's the right to dignity. That you have the right to dignity. Of course, I do. You are better. I look at this thing, man. I don't know what to say about
well, that's why I said a lot of these things on here do not. I mean, I'm wondering why we still have to put them down. But when you look at how things are happening day to day within our community, within our social structure, then like you said, all of these things are things that we expect. But
Suppose.
are these what we are getting now? Dr. Casey, number two is something that you always talk about,
Hmm.
the right to resources and information to address barriers of quality employment. And
The
you
fact
always talk about, your right to resources, how to use your resources effectively, and so forth.
having a right to resources and using resources or knowing what to do with the resources that you have a right to are two totally different things. A lot of things that we think are rights are not. A lot of things we assume that we have a right to this information, but the moment that someone tries to block it and it's allowed to be blocked, then you realize you don't really have a right to it. So I understand trying to specify because everything is a paper trail. So if you could back to the loopholes I talked about earlier about the loopholes, it's a lot of loopholes in all of the systematic things that we know of. So if you can find a loophole to say, well, nope, you can't do that because of this, then it's necessary to pinpoint. This is the reason why the laws are laws, and why I believe that all laws should be gone through and restructured so that we can have laws that fit who we are as a union. um up under the United States, because a lot of laws are outdated, but they're based on something that doesn't even apply right now. And so if you are trying to restructure things, then you need to be very specific, like the same way that it's specific laws talking about what type of percentage black people are, and the rights that black people do and don't have. Those things have to be worded specifically. Like the best example I could use is when you think about the VA and getting disability, or if you think about Social Security and getting disability, a lot of those things, the loophole is not what's not there. A lot of the loophole is actually what is specified in the laws that you're trying to find to justify whatever it is. The loophole is not the missing part. The loophole is them playing on the fact that they hope that you don't know what you need to know in order to get whatever it is that you're trying to do done. So if I tell you that you can't do this and you don't know that the law says specifically that you can, and so you don't bring it up, then you'll think, oh no, I don't have a right to this. But in some cases, there is no right to what specifically you're saying. But if I put it in paper and if I put it in writing, this is a specific right. This is something specifically I'm asking for. Because right now we got a whole lot of broad spectrum things where broadly we could say this or broadly we could say that. But if you specify exactly what you're wanting them to say, it's like if you go to the doctor or back to the when you're filing a VA claim, if you go and if when I submit my VA claims, this is a tip for the veterans. When I submit my VA claim, I don't just turn them in my medical records. You know what I do? I go and I highlight. This is what I need you to see right here. And then for when I did my first claim, I color coded it. I put a little key at the top. This color means this. This color means this. This color means this. And here, now I'm going to go and I'm going to highlight what I want you to see, because if I don't specify it for you exactly, then you're going to skim through it and be like, oh, no, it's not there. So it's about the wording. Everything is within the spelling and the wording of things. And that is the most important thing that we have, because if the wording is not accurate, then they'll get over on you. But if you have the wording that says specifically what you're asking for, and then it's turned into law, then they can't deny you and say, well, this is just a broad thing, it's too generalized. And they'll use that too generalized narrative to get a lot of things past people that don't know how to look for the very specific. So when you talk about researching, this is or resources, it,
Right.
it takes a lot of research to understand your resources, because again, if I put this broad thing, unemployment office, and this is, or the Department of Labor. I'm gonna give you all these resources within the Department of Labor, but you don't know about voc rehab. You don't know about all of the very specific things that are available. Then you don't know to use it. But if it's broad, then you just, well, I sent you down there. You didn't, use resources appropriately. Guess what? If I don't know exactly what the resources are that are available to me, how can I use
What
them
they ask you.
the way that they are intended to be used?
But there's a
Definitely.
confusion about what we think is our right and what's the law. I just give you a quick
Mhm.
example. Is that your driver's license? You think that you have a license to drive. Wait till you get in arrears in something. They'll tell you that no, this is a privilege that we allow you to have. This is not. We can take this privilege away from you anytime we get ready to. We're giving you a privilege to allow you to drive. And so
You
that's
want to
not
go
a
deeper?
right, even though I've taken a test, I've paid the money, I got all.
The deeper part is that
What's
I
that?
don't believe we supposed to need driver's licenses
Uh
for our
oh.
personal vehicles.
You went there. You went
Driver's
there.
licenses
Yeah, you.
is really
You went
for
there.
working class. That is not for what they use. The way that they use it is
That's a
not the way
straw
it's
man.
supposed to be
Let's
used.
see.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's a
All right.
So,
straw
Well, see
man.
that.
but if you don't know the specifics of that, then guess what? It's just like when they there's a video. I know y'all have seen it before. They pull up on a man in front of his house and
Yeah.
start trying to question him, and he like, you ain't got no right to question me. And he start reading off the law. But guess what? If you don't know to read off that law, if you don't know the actual penal code or what they can and they can't do, then you'll be like, okay, whatever you say, sir, you a damn
That's
almost
right.
turn your that dang on self in, and they ain't even got nothing to get you for. But if you
Yeah.
know specifically what it says, then they'll leave you alone, because damn, they ain't got no, so no dummy. They got them a smart one now, so they can't just pull the wool over your eyes like that.
Brother Williams, I want you to address number three. I'm gonna come back to you, Mr. Scott, on the right, the equitable wages. But as far as your right to assert and to have your rights enforced, uh, Brother Williams, we've seen a lot of trouble about this.
Well, I would kind of think that really speaks on what Dr. Casey already talked about, and it's basically knowing that you do have the right. But if you again don't know the difference between a right and a privilege, or you or in this constant loophole of not knowing how to go about getting the specifics addressed, then you can be told one thing and it's completely a lie. And unless you can prove that what you've been told is a lie, then in essence it's the truth. And that's what happens to us a lot as people, period. I mean, whether we want to talk about these workers' rights or just talking about human rights or talk about civil rights, it kind of all falls under the same category. If the people are not informed, then to me this goes right into political education. When the masses of people are not involved in the politics of governing, of whether it be self-governing, like Dr. Case is talking about with the driver's license, or it be just collective governing. When we don't know where to go, then we don't know our power. When we don't know our power, then we will fall for anything. Someone will come in and tell you one thing and misguide you or lead you down this dark tunnel that'll keep you just constantly.
Purposefully too.
Yeah, it's definitely all purposely. Send you down this tunnel just where you constantly. It's like getting. I would say it's just like getting on the phone with a telephone, or say like I did with the cable company when my bill is wrong. Next thing you know, I'm on hold. I'm talking to this operator that's a digital operator. Then it's going to transmit to this line, and they're going to say, "Oh, well, you're in the wrong department. Go to this line." And then next thing you know, you're on the phone for one whole hour just to get to the right person. Then next thing you know, the business now you pass operating hours and you got to call back tomorrow. Well, the average person works a 9 to 5. They don't have the time that it may take to deal with all of these various loopholes and all these various reroutings that take place in order to just find out where they need to go. So when you talk about somebody that is in a position where they're not making what they should make in the first place, I'm having to work 2 and 3 jobs possibly. I just don't have the time. And because I'm working 2 or 3 jobs, it probably means that I don't have the proper education. I probably don't have the proper knowledge. I don't know where to turn. So all of these things work against the average person. So then when we're talking about the right to assert, it goes into the fact that if I don't know that I have the power to make change, then I'll fall for whatever I'm told. I'm told that, hey, this is how it is. This is why we fired you. Period. Point blank. Move around. Most people at that point are so overconsumed with having to find another job, having to find another employment, they're not going to reach back and deal with the one that just done them wrong. And so it's getting in that vicious cycle of where we're just caught in the rat race to the point to where we're not able to educate ourselves about the
They
process.
try to frustrate you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Uh, Mr. Scott, does that feed right into this right number 4, the right to equitable wages, equal pay, and compensation that is owed? I mean, haven't we been asking for equal wages, equal pay? I mean, you know, I remember a song, "We Shall Overcome" or something like that.
Yeah, that's back to the whole discrimination thing. I mean, they've had different pay scales. When I first got into management at the county, I had a boss that didn't like to go to meetings. And so he would make me go to a lot of the meetings. And I would get privy to information that I would never see before. And so I would see everybody's salary. And I saw this and I saw my name there. And I said, wait a minute, I don't make this much money. Who is this? I was budgeted for so much money. Okay, I'd say I'm budgeted for $125,000. Okay, now they tell me that out of my check, they're doubling, paying my Social Security, paying my insurance, doing all this. But in reality, when I looked at the numbers, what they give me and what they got me budgeted for, I'm already paying that. They're taking that out of my labor already. I had no idea. I haven't, and then I got to see how the union came in with us, and they said, as a supervisor, you're not in the union. I said, well, they take dues from me every week. What the hell? I'm not in the union. And so, but whatever the union gave to the other workers, that's what we would get. So they play games with the money, basically, is what I saw. I mean, hell, how I'm budgeted for all this money. So in other words, I'm paying my own Social Security. I'm paying my own matching anything. It's coming out of my labor that they're budgeting for, that they're actually billing the government for what I'm doing. And so this is how they can get away with a lot of things that we just don't know what's going on behind the scenes with some of these pay things. And it really, you see, his dad says, when money's involved, strange things happen. I mean,
Hmm.
every time. And so that's really what pointed out to me this wages. And then for years, they have always tried to pay women less than they pay men. And I mean, that's part of the whole white supremacy game that they have tied up in. Women can't vote. They can't, they lesser this, blah, blah, blah. So to me, it's already tied to rights that we have. Of course, if I work and I do the same job, I should get paid the same as anybody that doesn't. I shouldn't get paid less. I qualified for it. I brought my education. I was hired to do this. So I should get what rate is. And sometimes you just have to stand up and fight for it. I mean, they're not handing you money. They're not handing you a promotion. They're not handing, you got to be, you got to play whatever game it is in whatever job that you have. I mean, that's they say you have the rights. Okay, well, they're going to always tell you that you have the right. It's in paper. There it is. But until you're able to assert it, until you're able
Yep.
to really assert that right, it's really not. It's just words on the paper.
I'm going to stick with you on number six too, Mr. Scott. The right to career advancement opportunities, and I'm looking at it like this. In education, suppose you have 16 high schools, in your city. Maybe you have one black principal, you have one Latino, and then if you're uh, elementary school district, maybe you have one a minority principal, one assistant principal. But it seems like you used to have a designated number of opportunities for minorities to advance. What do you think about? I mean, why why are we still asking for this, Mister Scott?
Well, that's you. I kind of answered your own question. Why we're still asking for this?
Called
It's
token.
you know, here in our school system, for example, the school system, we had a school called Minneapolis Central High School. My father-in-law is 100 years old. He went to Minneapolis Central High School. My sister graduated from Minneapolis Central High School where Prince, she was in school with Prince. That's Minneapolis Central High School. My brother graduated from Minneapolis Central High School, went down south and played principal. This black lady, Dr. Joyce Jackson, hired him back to be the last baseball coach at the school. So one day they promoted this guy, this black guy, Richard Green, to be head of Minneapolis schools. Okay. And Central was the best school in the city, all the way around, academically, everything. They built a new gym there, everything was going good. But when he came in, he told them, he said, well, we're going to close this school. And everybody was shocked because people that worked at the school lived in the neighborhood, they worked in the kitchen, they worked in the counselors, PhD principals. People were going to college. They had set up where my cousin went to Nebraska, played pro football, coming from Minneapolis Central High School. Closed, closed three high schools where all of us went. And so now there's no schools around here at all. There's no schools around. And then the school that they have, the little grade school, they make all these kids go somewhere else. It's all white kids there in our neighborhood. Beautiful little school, brand new school. They took all of us out of there and they just farm us everywhere else. See, closing that school has been a death knell for this black community here in South Minneapolis. The lady that worked in the office at the school, when my brother transferred there so he could play baseball, she grew up with my dad in Chicago, in DeSable High School. My brother walks into the school and says, oh, you're Scotty's son. Oh, come on, we'll get you going. They grease the skids for him to go down south and play baseball and come back and coach. when we have opportunities, whatever we do, they just seem to want to take it away, and then give us the words. What is this thing? The right to career advancement opportunities. Okay. Well, okay. How do I get those career advancement opportunities? I have the right to them. What do I just fill out application? Is that all I have to do? What? So you have to have guidance, and that's what those people at that school did. They guided her. My sister left that school, went to Harvard and Columbia. She's a PhD doctor. Now, I could tell you all kinds of people that went to Central that were able to do things that they would have never done at another school because of the community, and they own that school. They closed it. They didn't want it anymore. I mean, advancement. And then I could have advanced at the county. I didn't want that. I didn't want. I would have had to fire so many people to do that. I said, what the heck? I've been here long enough. I go on my own. Yeah, I have the right to it, I guess. They say so.
Brother Williams, the right to work, the right of workplaces free of discrimination, harassment, and other harm.
Basically, that's just again pulled right out of the same playbook as we've been dealing with as Black people when we talk about human rights or civil rights. And so from that standpoint, I just look at all of these really is just a rally cry and a point to try to unify the people to collectively come together and know that they do have the ability to fight against racism, fight against discrimination, fight against anything that basically keeps them down or on a job. And I want to say this in regards to that. To me, the reason when I look at the collective overall goals or the collective document, it has to do with the fact that so many of our people are afraid, and people in general just are afraid. Not just Black people, but people tend to be afraid to challenge a job, challenge who you work for, because it's like most people tend to think two things: either I deal with what I'm being dealt, or I get fired. And so when you think about the fact that you do have the ability to make change and address these indifferences and address these unjust situations, most people think that automatically means termination. And so that's what they want you to think. They want us to think about all of this as individuals instead of collective. And that's where the power of the unions come into place, because it's one thing to just fire one person and let them go. If they can get away with that, they do it all day long every day. But when you have an entire workforce that can destroy your bottom line because of all of them asking for equal rights, all of them asking for to not be discriminated against, and then for that to actually get out and affect your shareholders. So when we start talking about this getting released to the public and it affects the shareholders, now all of a sudden it's going to really hurt some pockets. So from that standpoint, it just goes into our ability as a people to recognize that if we don't fight, then we create situations to where they will just continue to raise the bar of enslavement, and that's all we're talking about. It's like how much can I get away with? I mean, it's just, again, it goes back to politics. When you're talking about greed, greed has no cap on its wants and desires. Period. If I can get away with paying you $3 an hour and you don't bark, then I'm gonna drop it a dime, and then I'm gonna drop it another dime. I'm gonna keep going as far as you let me go to see how much profit I can make. And we already see it. I mean, we see it. It's been thrown in our face with the oil industries right now in terms of how they've been profiting more money than they ever have during this situation that we're dealing with now in these wars. And it don't have anything to do with the lack of actually having access to oil. It's just raising the price simply because of the fact that they got something that they can use to trick the public to feel like it's tied together. And so we buy
We
into
just
it.
talked about that
Yeah,
supply and demand.
Yep.
But that ain't even supply and demand because you got the supply. That's what I'm saying. You got the
But
supply.
if you give the illusion that
There
the
you go.
supply
That's
is
it.
low,
There you go. That's
and then
the
you create
illusion.
a panic,
The
and
illusion.
the panic, which is the distraction,
Yep.
gives the illusion that the supply is low. So if we create the panic, then we let some pumps run dry a couple places, because literally they're letting the pumps run dry,
Yeah.
and then now it's a demand for the supply, even though we in surplus. But we just talked about they
Yeah.
made billions dollars worth of profits.
Yep.
How do you make billions of dollars worth of profits if the gas price is like if the oil is just that high? You can't.
Yeah. And that's all we're talking about. It's just corporate greed. They're gonna get away with as much as they can. And as long as people approach things as individuals as opposed to utilizing the people power, then this is what you're left with. And I think that's when I look at these, mind you, I'm on board with y'all in saying that it's a shame that we're still at this level to where these basic things keep getting asked for. In fact, I would even go as far as we damn near begging for them. And when you begging
Hmm.
your oppressor for anything, then you're going to continue to get treated like a victim. So it comes to a point to where we have to hold ourselves accountable for action, no matter what the cost. And that's how you make lasting change. Otherwise, it's here today, gone tomorrow. They just cycle through. They buy somebody off, or the person that was fighting for their rights. They get them to sign some NDA agreement. Go ahead and pay them off so that they'll be quiet, and then let this go back to sleep. Raise their profits up again, and the cycle just continues.
Continues. Yeah.
Yeah,
Dr. Casey.
and so many of these things, so many of these things are like you see the words on the paper, but where's the enforcement of these things? Why
Well,
are these things? Yeah, we have the right to know this. I
well,
go and
that's
make a complaint. I go, how is this enforced? See, they don't enforce these things. They can throw the words up, but there's no teeth in it. There's no
well.
until you try to
First,
exercise it, then you find out all the things you got to fill this paper out. And as Brother War was saying, when he calls the cable, he gets pushed around and talk to this person,
yeah.
talk to this machine,
They
talk to
make
that
it
machine.
difficult.
You go
They
right
want you
around
to
and
quit.
Of
yeah,
course they do.
yeah.
Dr. Casey, I want you to address number seven. And the right to health, healing, and rest. Usually when the first thing, hey man, I got to get back for they put somebody else in my place. I can, why don't you take a couple weeks off? Oh man, I'll lose my job. Uh, you know, but then you go back, you get sick, and then you get fired or whatever, or I mean, but what's your? I'm sure your lawsuit addresses this very uh, graciously, right?
Man, everything that the last 5 minutes it just talked about um addresses this, because literally they will do anything. Most of my cases, it seems to be included in this lawsuit, is one on appeal, because if they can discourage you, if they can kind of shoo you away, if they can, what I'm saying, put you to rest mentally, if they overwhelm you, then they have the advantage. Because most people, I have a veteran neighbor, he could have 100% right now, but they denied him once and he ain't never went back. You know why he ain't never went back? Because he don't feel like going through the rigmarole of what it takes to get the claim approved. And even when Mr. Scott talked about education and people go to college thinking, okay, if I go to college and I put myself in a better position, but college was made for when white people were um in leadership and black people were just workers. Now that black people have stepped into that college role, because it's supposed to be for managerial type of leadership. That's what college sets you up for. College don't set well, now it sets you up to be a good worker. But originally college was to take the person that was going to be in leadership supervisor roles into the next level, and management roles to the next level. So now when you're thinking you're going to get this education because it's going to put you up one, and now it doesn't, it has it diminishes. They diminish everything once black people get into it too good, because now I'm putting you on a level that you're not never supposed to be on. And they cannot put us on a level that we're never supposed to be on. So even when you talk about getting rest, you know that if this is for the listeners, if you get fired from your job tomorrow, they're gonna replace you the very next day. But within a week, they're gonna have somebody lined up to replace you. So if you take time off, a lot of places, states are at will states where they could fire you for anything if they really want to. They can make up a reason if it's not an at will state. So when you're asking for the right to rest, people are overwhelmed. Even when I think about the young lady that just killed all those people in California, uh, I feel sorry for her because as an ICU nurse in the heat of a pandemic during COVID, there's no excuse for her to go and kill all those people. However, the undue stress, the pressure, whatever she's going through mentally, people need rest. And if you don't mandate it, they're gonna work you like a slave, because this is just a slave system reinvented. This is not a new system. This is not like the workforce is the slave force that they just put a new they rebrand and shit. This is not like they really doing something for the benefit of the people. This is a rebranding of the slave system that now we just gonna call it the workforce. We're gonna pay them a little bit. We're gonna give them a little bit of health care, but they can't do nothing outside of what we tell them they can do, or else they're gonna get fired. So literally, this is something that needs to be said, because people should be able to take mental health days. People should be able to take rest days. People should be able to not just have access to healthcare. It should be mandated that they at this point jobs need to force people to go to the doctor. This should be a part of them being employees, because if not, then they won't make time because they're afraid to lose their job. They're afraid of the reprimand that comes with needing whether it's maternity care for men, because a lot of times people think that when it comes to like maternity care, that if a woman is off work for 6 weeks, she'll be fine. But those 6 weeks of being off work, if you off work and at home by yourself trying to raise a new child, and then you're already overwhelmed thinking about all the things you got to do, thinking about going back to work, you need that support. So it should be just as important for a man to be off with you to help sustain you during that time as it is for a woman. But if you don't tell them, specifically ask for them and make that law, they'll never do it. Why? They don't have to. It's about the money. So you being off work affects their bottom line.
Yep.
You being you need for any reason. The, anything that affects the bottom line, they are not going to just give you that. They're not going to just let you have it. Like they're just not. So some stuff we don't understand because it seems like this should be already what it is. That's not what it is, because clearly it's not happening. So again, you have to say things verbatim. You have to be very specific. Even when you, lawsuit, when you go in them courtrooms, you cannot give a broad claim of what might have happened. You have to be very specific about what took place, who did it, how they did it, and what everything. All your T's have to be crossed, all your I's have to be dotted. If not, they will throw that out. So the things that we're seeing to be put in place is because without it being specified, they're not going to honor it. They're going to say it's too broad. I've literally got paperwork right here in this folder that what you said is too broad. We can't prove that because it's so broad. We don't know. And they'll use it against you, even if you're right. You could be 100% right, and they'll still try to use it against you because they're hoping that you don't know.
Uh, Brother Williams, I feel like number 8 was taken straight out of the Panther Handbook. The right to privacy, freedom from surveillance, monitoring, automatic management, and control.
Yeah. The problem with number 8 is now you start getting into where they can always try to use that loophole that has to do with inventory asset control against you. So when you asking the right to privacy from surveillance, and I'm gonna give you a funny example with I because I'm not gonna get into my specific career path, but what I am gonna say is I worked on a job at one when I used to live in Florida. When I used to live in Florida, I worked on a job, and what I did, go to show you a element of racism. What I did is I used to have this um, pen. It's an ink pen that has a built-in camera on it. I used to carry that to work with me, and when certain supervisors or managers want to go to have a conversation with me, I would click that button and go to record it. Right. And I had been with this company for about 18 years. So I was a senior person within my field, and so I actually stood up for all of the workers, black, white, and indifferent. When we got a specific contract, we were told one thing on paper of this is how it's going to go. But once the company got in red, they tried to renege on the arrangements that they had with us. And so I went out for bat and stood up on behalf of the workers. Lo and behold, when I caught one of the supervisors lying to the upper management in regards to the fact of why they took our pay away, which was basically mileage. We was entitled to mileage because we was traveling all up and down the Florida Turnpike. Uh, Once I caught them lying to the higher ups, and I recorded it, and I actually referenced back on an email chain that I had, and I caught her red-handed. She had it out for me from moving forward, and so she did her damnedest to get me fired. And because I made the mistake of sharing it with one of another a white coworker who happens to be apparently on her side, she turned around and reported me to HR as a corporate spy, mind you, because I am recording conversations so that make sure I got myself in check, and it got relayed over to HR that I was being a corporate spy, and they actually went for it, and I got fired 2 days before my 3 week Christmas vacation, and 1 month before I was going to transfer out of that department into a whole nother department to get relocated to Tallahassee. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll do it if they can. If you give them an inch, they'll definitely take them out.
And they took it. And I actually fought the situation. And this is after I had moved to California, got another job, a job that I like better, by the way, and and ultimately ended up winning the right to return back to the company. So in other words, the way it all ended up in after going through, all of the proceedings and everything, is that they could not deny me rehire, so that I was fired unjust. Now, did they give me my job back? No, they told me I could reapply and that it would not be used against me.
But they wasn't gonna
See.
give it back if you reapplied. They was
Of
once
course
they
not.
once they get their mind frame wrapped around anything, they're not gonna let it go.
But this also says the right to privacy. And see, what I do now is I do unemployment hearings. I represent employers all over the country, and I got a lot of them that come up about this COVID testing. Okay,
Mm.
because a lot of people, they say that this is their personal medic, they don't want to take it. And so I had one lady that you can get a religious exemption or you can get a health exemptions, that kind of thing. Well, this woman got a religious exemption so that she didn't have to take it, but she still had to be tested on a regular basis.
Right.
Yeah.
And she
Mr.
refused.
Scott.
And
Uh,
so a lot, yeah.
no, go ahead. I want you to go ahead and finish that thought.
Oh, yeah. And so this whole thing with the COVID and testing, so she refused to be tested. And so she got fired. But a lot of these folks think that if they don't want to take it, and they say they have their own religion or they have their own personal reasons, and some of them win unemployment. Some of them win those cases Even though, I mean, I've had people from the American Red Cross, phlebotomists that work with people. They want them to take they won't take it. There's a lot of people that refuse to do it and they get fired. And to me, that's a privacy issue. I mean, anything with your health care, I mean, isn't that a privacy? That's what I've always been taught to believe.
HIPAA.
But that's this is your private, your body. But see, we're really intruding on that, not with just that, obviously, with
See, but this
some health.
privacy thing to me, it
Yeah,
has nothing to do with the actual anything that we care about. It's you got people with cameras that's recording people. Um when you think about, I think it was an NBA owner a few years ago that got caught up because one of his girlfriends recorded him saying some malicious things about black people and stuff.
About Magic Johnson, Daniel Snyder.
I mean,
Asked her
but
why she brought that into the game.
so when you think about the people that's getting hit now, it's not for the common people. It's for these big head leaders of organizations and things are getting caught up now. So they have to we think that a lot of things are done on the behalf of people, and it's really not. It's really done to protect the other people in ways that we don't recognize it. But privacy, you know who would benefit from that the most? The people that got the most to lose.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Uh,
let me add a little bit to this real quick. Just also keep in mind, I think part of what this one is addressing too is how where you have some people who are getting fired based upon their social media feed, which
Mm.
don't have
yeah,
nothing to do with what they're
yeah,
doing at work.
yeah.
But employers now oftentimes are going to your social media feeds even before they hire you or
Yeah,
why they hire you. And if they want to find a reason to fire you, a lot of times that's when they go
yeah,
and check out what you're doing on your social media feed.
yeah.
And so that's what I believe a lot of this is addressing. One thing I do want to say else on here when it talks about automated management and control, I really think that's a tough uphill, definitely uphill battle because everything based upon technology is going toward automation. And so to feel like you have a right to deny a corporation from going automated, I really don't see how that can pan out.
yeah,
Um, that's a
Yeah.
far stretch there. I mean, I even deal. I'm currently in the technology field and deal with license plate recognition. And no, to think that you're gonna stop automation, it ain't finna happen. It's not that easy. I think the answer to something like that is where we have to be more innovative as a people and look toward creating our own industries, our own jobs, and our own means of production. I really think that's what that goes back to, and that really needs to be the message to put home, to pin home from that is self determination.
uh, Mr. Scott, the right to dignity in seeking, securing, maintaining, and retiring from employment. You just said that you deal with this field a lot, right?
Yeah, I deal with that. I've had a workers' comp business. I was a workers' comp specialist for the state of Minnesota. The whole issue of rights. I mean, I guess it's what you fight for. I mean, really is what it kind of comes down to. Um, I lost the questions here. It's not on my phone anymore.
No, well, no. I think when you talk about retirement, nowadays there's more of an emphasis on uh, getting you to retire or take an early separation from work, whereas usually people used to depend upon that experience to bring structure and to maintain some type of balance within the organization. Have we
Well,
lost our respect for experience?
yeah, they use age things. I mean, they have all kinds of little ways to get you out of somewhere, for whatever reason. Maybe somebody wants the job you have, and they got somebody they want to put in. You get to be 65 or whatever. All of a sudden, They talk to you like you don't know what you're doing, and you've been there longer than anybody's been there. I mean, you know stuff like the back of your hand. And so the whole issue of retirement to me for black people is just it's a myth. I mean, until they stop sending me a light bill, until they stop sending out, until they stop taxing my social security, taxing my pension. Yeah, I'm hustling. I'm going to continue to do something, and I do a lot of things musically off the books. I mean,
You really
I
want to
love
say that
that.
right now? I assume you think the IRS is not monitoring and surveillance on this.
And when I say that, it's for very little money. It's for very little. It's just for the transportation. Actually, it's the cost. It's
now
a,
you
I don't do
want
nothing under the table. Everything I do is fine.
I think this goes back to that terminology we want to hip Anthony to called dry snitching. I don't think he knows what that means. The hip hop term
The
dry
rap
snitching.
game will tell you about not doing that. We just talked about that. The rap game will let you know not to say nothing like that.
no. Well, I'm not gonna even touch that right now.
Don't
It's too late in the
don't.
game. But believe me, I'll get to it because I got some ammunition for that. So.
Dr. Casey, I'm gonna give this last one to you because Atlanta's always had a special place in my heart as far as the elections and like I said, like giving water to people that are waiting in line, things like this. But number 10 is the right to participate in democracy. Isn't part of that the right to vote?
Well, so let's just talk about the other day I was listening to, I believe, a senator. I don't know what state she was from, but she was saying that if people are disabled, they shouldn't be able to vote. And it was like a list of things that she was like, well, if they have these issues, then why are they able to vote? Um, the truth of the matter is we don't have as many rights as we believe that we have. So when you talk about the right for democracy, that is not only voting. That entails a whole lot more because politics is a vast um majority of how everything works, and a lot of times people feel stifled by politics and what goes into the whole realm of that. But the right to vote clearly isn't a right because we are fighting for nonsense when it comes to being able to vote as women, as men, as people that's been convicted of crimes where democracy and voting still impacts them and they can't say anything about it. It's a lot. It's a lot of rights that we don't have that we think that we. I mean, we take a lot of things for granted because we've been fed a convenient lie about what we're capable of and what we should be able to do that a lot of times we don't have the ability to do. So when you think about that, like here, um, it's not just here though. It's not a Georgia thing. This is everywhere where people are um not properly informed. They don't know enough to do enough. So um I think what you're reading to us and asking us I think that all of it is necessary because the verbiage of what is known is very much less than the unknown, or yeah, it's less than the unknown. People don't know enough to do enough, but the unknown portion of it is so broad to where you have to specify certain things because clearly these rights are not rights that we hold um as a standard of living. Like some of this shit should be just a standard of living. It should be just like, okay, this is the standard and nothing should fall up under this. But that's not the case. And this is spread not just in the United States for real. These are like a status quo that should be all over. I've always talked about there's no reason that we should be paying for natural resources like water. I'm like, I mean, I'm surprised that we're not paying for air at this point. I mean, and technically, in some ways, we
Some
Go
of
are.
us haven't
go
got around
go
to
go
Yeah.
to
working
the
on it.
gas station and try to put air in your tires if you don't think you're paying
Right.
for air. Okay. But
Well, actually, James, in California, state of California, even though they have those prices on, all you got to do is go tell them
yeah,
I need air,
yeah,
and
yeah.
they have to give it to you.
But
Really?
like they say, if you don't know,
If you don't know,
yeah,
you gonna
you
they
put
gonna
you putting
stick
that
your money
quarter
in there.
you,
Oh
you know
well.
you know. But hey, great conversation. I wanted to go over this Black Bill of Rights, see what everybody thought about it. Mr. Scott, your final thoughts for the evening. Glad to see you in tonight, and hope to see you back next week. It just seems kind of funny that you always appear when Dr. Casey's here, but I'm not going to say anything about when Miss Sims is here by herself. I never see you, but
Your
that
ass
Yeah,
show
that's
be
not true.
instigating.
That's not true. You know, well, sometimes JK3 he kind of stretches some of the things. So, but yeah, it's always good to talk with you because I talk with you fellas because I really believe that Dr. Casey and Miss Sims when she's here, because I truly believe that the conversations and the thing that we have, this is something conversations that we could be having in 1652. How do we get out of it? And talk to each other as to how we have to deal with these things that we have to deal with, and to get to know that there are other people that experience these things and what they think about it, what they can share with you about all these things that we have to deal with as Black people and the situation that we're in this country. There's a lot of good things in this country, but then there's a lot of things that they continue to keep us down. And I think having this conversation is for me, it's always a good thing. I look forward to it, and I really look forward to delving into some of the hip hop stuff, and to really, but right now I'll just rest on that and say I'll let the Minister Farrakhan speak for me on that. I won't say it anymore.
Wait a minute now, 'cause Minister Farrakhan is with the shits. He
no,
he.
Right.
he just did a speech last week. I think it was. It was on YouTube. You can go check it out. But
Well, I know that he has had several meetings with the rap community here in Atlanta. He has held several gatherings and shindigs, if I would call it, where he has come down here and he has met with a plethora of rap artists on several different occasions to impact that.
And I'm
You
glad
know,
to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. It's very much needed. I'm glad to hear that.
yeah,
it didn't change nothing because the people that's gonna do what they're gonna do it regardless. They don't care about that.
yeah. uh, but Dr. Casey, always glad to see you. Give us your final thoughts for the evening, and as always, a pleasure.
Within my final thoughts, I am reminded of a Tupac interview where he said he didn't want to be 50 years old uh at a BET awards talking about, asking for the same things that he was asking for when he was a kid, and what his mama and them was asking for. And that's what it is. We're in a cycle. We're in a very bad cycle. It's a corrupt cycle because we can't get out of the loop. And it's just looping and it's looping and it's looping. And in order for us to stop the cycle, something has to cease. But how do we get what needs to be put to rest, actually put to rest so that we can stop the cycle? Is not enough people that's willing to jump out of the rat race to really say, okay, it's time to pivot here. And then the people that do pivot, we don't pivot in large enough numbers for long enough times for it to have an actual impact. So what I would call people to put into action is we got to pivot. We got to do something different. It might not be within legislation. It might not be, something that is a recognized by the government. But at some point, there has to be a pivot so that we can come out of the same cycles. We've been talking the stuff that we talking about right now. We was talking about last year when I first started on the show. And we haven't really seen no change. The biggest change that we didn't seen is some people get convicted of some crimes, but the way what conviction, meaning the guys that killed Ahmad down here, they get some serious time. But other than that, we see a more of a resurgent of craziness and foolishness more than we see of peace and change. But then we also see the frustration that comes from being isolated and being withdrawn from other people that is taking over the world and the communities in general. I mean, when you get a lot of domestic violence deaths and things like that, some at some point we have to grab and hold our own accountable. Not just that, we got to stop living in denial about the things that's really going on, the real life issues is going on. We turn a blind eye to, and we have to begin to address it. Mental health, spiritual health, financial health, physical health, and until we begin to really say, okay, enough is enough, we'll continue in the cycle. And beyond the physical health, we need to really put in place some spiritual health checklists, some mental health checklists. Because, and I'm not talking about religion, and I'm not talking about just going and getting some medicine from a psychiatric doctor either. We have to do some things that's going to make real change, meaning accountability, responsibility, and then the pivot that I keep saying. So at some point, we have to be accountable to ourselves, to our community, to our children, to our parents, to our grandparents. We have to be accountable for legacy. And what are we leaving? What are we doing that's going to impact the world long term? If we're not talking about long term impact, then what are we doing? Because at this point, unless I want my 13-year-old to be 33 and still talking about the same thing on a show, doing the same damn thing that I'm doing, we have to make some change because I am fighting the same fight that my grandma fought. And I should be fighting a different fight at this point in my life. Not at this point in my life, this point in the world and society. We're still going in the same, the rat race is this hamster wheel. How do we make change? We have to pivot. We have to take accountability. We have to check ourselves so that we can hold ourselves accountable. Because if everybody hold themselves accountable, we don't got to check others. We ain't gotta police everybody else if we hold ourselves accountable and we have a long history of pointing a finger instead of saying, okay, what do I need to do? So what I would ask for listeners to do is to figure out what they need to do and then go and watch Speaking Freedom TV and listen to some info. Like, I'm not saying it just because it's mine. I share a lot of insight that I don't have the opportunity to share when I do this show. I just don't have the opportunity to talk about everything. But there I can talk about, and I can't tell you what to do with your life. My goal is not to tell you what to do, is to help you understand how to think so that you can make better decisions every single day. I don't want to be the person that you come to. I am not who you run to. This is not escape. I am the person that helps you learn how to be better for yourself. Because if I help you be better for yourself, then you can help the next person be better for themselves. And then that's how you change the cycle. But it starts with you. Be accountable. Take responsibility. Address some shit that you might been letting slide for a long time. Because if you let things slide, then you feel diminished. It diminishes your ability to feel empowered as a person to even hold yourself accountable. Because if you don't hold yourself accountable, then when somebody else do something, you're gonna let that slide too. Stop letting stuff slide. Don't mean be violent. It doesn't mean be belligerent. It don't mean tear somebody else's crap up. It just means know what's going on, be accountable for what's going on, take responsibility, and then put an action with that.
Brother Williams, take us on.
All right. Going into what Dr. Casey talked about, as well as just the recognition of it being Black August month, which goes into, recognizing the rights that our revolutionaries fought for is it, even when it comes to being behind bars of political prisons and the rights within with our population would have in prison. One of the things I think is real important that, and this is a principle that I live by, that I think is just good to state this out to everybody, is that there's a consequence for every action and non-action. And those are one of the things I keep on the forefront of my mind all the time, because too often I don't think we recognize as a people, as individuals, the fact that there is a consequence for what you do and what you don't do. We always think about consequences in terms of the actions or steps that we make, but we don't also recognize that it's the same thing as on the other side of the fence, that there are consequences for non-action. When it applies to collective work, collective building, kind of going into what we was talking about as the power that the people have. When we don't come together as a people, when we don't recognize our strength, then that non-action causes the oppressor, causes oppression to take place, causes greed to take place, causes us to stay divided as a people, causes us to lose our generational gains that we've made in previous times with these same battles, because the next generation comes along and feels like they don't have to fight the same fight, or they don't have to maintain that level of drive that was done before them. So therefore, the non-action that takes place has consequences of causing us to be right back on that hamster wheel, as Dr. Casey said. So it's imperative that we recognize that we are there are consequences for us not being involved. So when we talk about not enough people in the struggle for freedom, in the struggle for equality, in the struggle for just addressing rights in general, it goes into the fact that there is consequences and there's not enough people that are involved. Therefore, you give your hand to the oppressor, you give your hand to to racism and everything that goes along with that. So we owe it to ourselves. We owe it to humanity at this point. Look at what's going on with global warming. Look at what's going on with climate change. As a human being, the consequences of our non-action on taking steps to do the right thing to save the next generation is being dealt with and felt right now. So everybody in the listening audience recognize that the fact that we are not taking the steps to be involved, we're not doing our part, we're not holding ourselves accountable, like Dr. Casey said, there are consequences for that. Whether you want to fess up to it now or keep your head in the sand, recognize that you must be involved to some degree and some level. The more we do that, the better things will be. Period. It's natural physics. If more of us are involved, more there will be more changes. There's more changes. There will be obviously opportunities and greater advancements for us. But we cannot allow ourselves to slip up and think that for every minor victory we have, that we don't have to maintain that level of victory. Within the Panther Party, we talk about define, develop, and defend. To defend something basically goes into the fact that whatever was already previously done, that you build upon that foundation, that you must maintain that grip and keep going and moving forward. You can never let up. We need to get out of that mentality of feeling like we can retire from fighting for our rights, going into the thing we was talking about earlier. No, that's a myth. When you talk about the retirement from struggle, that is a myth. Because when you think you're gonna retire from struggle, your enemy is gonna continue from the cradle to the grave to give you hell. So if you are okay with that, and you okay with your next generation having to fight the same fight you fought, then continue to not hold yourself accountable for your non-action. So, with that being said, we must be active. We must hold ourselves accountable for the non-actions. There are consequences for everything that is done and not done. All power to the people.
Hey, great show tonight. Thank everyone for their input, and I look forward to talking to you again next week. Have a great night.
All right.
All right.